10,000 years ago, humanity disappeared. They did not die in a great war. No plague killed them. No asteroids struck their worlds. One day, 14 billion humans simply vanished from 200 planets across the galaxy. They left behind empty cities, silent ships, a message that no species could understand. The message said, "We are not ready, but we will return when we are." Ambassador Kethveril stood before the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Concord. His blue scales caught the light of 1,000 floating screens, each showing the face of a different species. 4,000 civilizations had gathered for this summit, as they did every 100 years. And as always, they discussed the same question. What happened to the humans? "We have searched for 10,000 years, Kethveril said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "We have found nothing. No bodies, no ships, no trace of where they went. I propose we finally accept what we have always known. Humanity is gone. It is time to close this chapter forever." The assembly erupted in noise. Some species cheered. They had always feared humans and their strange ways. Others cried out in protest. They remembered humanity differently. Kethveril remembered the stories his grandmother told him. She had met humans once when she was young. She said they were the strangest creatures in the galaxy. They laughed at death. They made friends with species that had been enemies for millions of years. They looked at impossible problems and simply tried to solve them anyway. They failed often, but sometimes, against all logic, they succeeded. The humans were chaos, his grandmother had said. Beautiful, terrifying chaos. And the galaxy has been quieter without them. Quieter. That was the word everyone used. The galaxy had become quieter after humanity left. Some said it meant peace. Others said it felt more like holding your breath, waiting for something that never came. The vote passed. Humanity was officially declared extinct. All investigations would end. The human question was finally closed, as the delegates left the assembly hall. A young Sindari astronomer named Lith sat alone in her observation room on the far side of the station. She was not important enough to attend the summit. She was just a junior scientist, assigned to watch the stars in the region of space, once called the human zone. Now, everyone called it the dead zone. Lith had spent 3 years watching those stars. Nothing ever changed. The planets humans left behind remained empty. Their stations floated in darkness. Sometimes she wondered why she bothered. Nothing would ever happen there. Then she saw it. A star was blinking. Not randomly, like a natural pulse. The light flickered in a perfect pattern. On, off, on, off. Short, long, short. A sequence that repeated every 47 seconds. Exactly. Lith checked her instruments. They were working correctly. She recorded the pattern and ran it through the translation computer. The machine was programmed to recognize mathematical sequences and convert them to meaning. The result made her heart stop. The star was playing music. Not just any music. The computer identified it as a human lullaby recorded 12,000 years ago. The song was about a child asking when their parent would come home, and the parent answering, "Soon, when I am ready, when I have become what I need to be." Lith stared at the screen for a long time. Her hands trembled as she saved the data. She knew she should report this immediately. But who would believe her? A junior astronomer claiming that a star was playing human music? She decided to watch for one more night. Just to be certain, the next night the pattern changed. A new song began. This one was older, from Earth itself before humans ever left their birth planet. The translation software called it "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," a children's song about wondering what stars were made of. On the third night, the star went silent. Lith felt her hope dying. Perhaps she had imagined it. Perhaps the instruments had malfunctioned. Then just before dawn, every star in the dead zone lit up at once. Not explosions. Not supernovas. They simply became brighter, as if someone had turned up a light. The darkness that had covered human space for 10,000 years began to fade. And in that growing light, Lith saw something that made her cry out in shock. Ships. Thousands of them. They appeared from nowhere, floating in perfect formation around stars that burned in colors she had never seen before. They were not human ships from the old records. They were something new, something that looked like it had grown rather than been built, something alive. A message appeared on her screen. It was written in the Sindari language, but also in 100 other languages at once. "Hello, little astronomer. We have been watching you watch us. You kept looking when everyone else gave up. You kept hoping when everyone else forgot. That matters more than you know. Tell your leaders that humanity has returned. We have been preparing, and now we are ready. A darkness is coming to the galaxy. But do not be afraid. We did not come back to save you. We came back to teach you how to save yourselves. And we came back because we missed you. All of you. Even the ones who hated us. We have learned many things in our long sleep, but mostly we learned this. We were always meant to be together. See you soon." The message ended. The stars continued to glow. Lythe ran to find someone, anyone who would listen. She burst into the assembly hall, where the last delegates were still leaving. Yes, they're back. She screamed, not caring about protocol. The humans. They're back. Keth Verrill turned to look at her. In his eyes, she saw something she did not expect. Not disbelief. Not anger. Relief. And beneath the relief, fear. "We know," he said quietly. "We just received their message. Every planet in the Concord received it at the same moment." He paused, and his voice dropped to a whisper. "They said they have something to tell us. Something about a coming darkness. Something they learned in their long absence." He looked out at the stars, where the dead zone was coming back to life. "And they said they are glad to be home." The universe held its breath. After 10,000 years of silence, humanity had returned, and nothing would ever be the same. The Galactic Concord sent 12 ships into the dead zone. They called it a diplomatic fleet. But everyone knew the truth. They were afraid. They wanted answers. And they were not sure if humanity would welcome them or destroy them. Commander Sauron stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, watching the stars grow brighter as they crossed into human space. He was a warrior of the militant orthodoxy, born and raised for battle. He had fought in 17 wars. He had never lost. And he had never, in his entire life, felt fear like this. The young astronomer Lythe stood beside him. The Concord had brought her along because she was the first to see the signs of humanity's return. She was small and quiet, and completely out of place among soldiers and diplomats. But she had been watching human space for 3 years. She knew these stars better than anyone. "The readings make no sense," she said, staring at her instruments. "There are planets here that did not exist last month. Stars that should have died 1 billion years ago are burning like new. Space itself feels different." Soren grunted. "Different how?" Lythe struggled to find the words. "Alive," she finally said. "Space feels alive. They've traveled for 6 days. On the 7th day, they found it. A station hung in orbit around a star that burned purple and gold. The station was enormous, bigger than most moons. Its surface was covered in growing things, gardens and forests that should not have survived in space. Light poured from 1,000,000 windows. And from the station, a voice spoke in perfect greeting. "Welcome, friends. We have been expecting you. Please follow the guide lights to the docking bay. We have prepared food and rest for your journey. And when you are ready, we will answer all your questions." The voice was warm, kind. It sounded like a parent welcoming children home after a long trip. Soren did not trust it, but he gave the order to dock. Inside the station, they were met by a being that called itself a custodian. It was not human. It looked like a creature made of soft light and gentle curves. It explained that humans had created it to welcome visitors, to make them comfortable, to help them understand. "The humans will speak with you soon," the custodian said. "But first, you must rest. You have traveled far, and what comes next will require strength." The delegates were taken to a garden habitat. Trees from 100 worlds grew side by side. Rivers flowed in paths that seemed impossible. And everywhere, there were animals. Sauron stopped walking. His body went rigid, In front of him stood a creature from his homeworld, a great beast with 4 horns and silver fur. His people called them the Peaceful Ones. They had been extinct for 50,000 years, killed when his ancestors first developed weapons. "That is impossible," he whispered. The custodian smiled gently. "Humanity has been remembering things the universe forgot. The dead can live again, Commander. Not all of them. Not always. But some things that were lost can be found." Soren watched the Peaceful One drink from a stream. It looked at him with eyes full of ancient wisdom. It did not fear him. It simply existed, calm and complete. He did not understand why, but tears began falling down his face. While the others rested, Life explored. She was too curious to sleep. She wandered through corridors that seemed to change shape as she walked. She found a room full of floating lights that whispered stories. She found another room where water flowed upward, defying all physics. Then she found the archive. It was a hall so vast she could not see the end. Shelves rose into darkness above, filled with glowing crystals. Each crystal contained information, records, memories, stories. Life touched one. She saw the birth of a star. She touched another. She lived the entire life of a creature that died 1,000,000 years ago on a planet that no longer existed. Beautiful, is it not? She spun around. A human stood behind her. He looked ordinary. Average height, brown skin, dark hair, simple clothes. But looking at him made her mind hurt. She could feel something behind his eyes. Something vast. Something that stretched far beyond his physical body. "You are afraid," the human said. His voice was kind. "I understand. We have changed much since we left. But we are still human. We still feel joy and sorrow and love. We still tell bad jokes and argue about silly things. We just learned some new tricks." Leith found her voice. "What happened to you? Where did you go?" The human smiled. "We went inward. We spent 10,000 years learning who we really were. We faced every fear, every hatred, every dark thing hiding in our hearts. We broke ourselves apart and put ourselves back together. It was the hardest thing we ever did. But we are better now. Not perfect. Never perfect. But better. Why did you come back?" The smile faded. "Because something is coming. Something old and terrible. It has destroyed other galaxies. It feeds on despair. It shows civilizations the truth of entropy, the fact that everything ends, and it makes them lose the will to continue. It is coming here, and the galaxy is not ready." The Life felt cold fear creep into her chest. "Can you stop it?" The human shook his head. "We cannot defeat it alone. No one can. But we learned something in our long journey inward. We learned that meaning is not found, it is created. We learned that connection matters more than power. We learned that hope is not foolish. It is the bravest choice a being can make." He reached out and took her hand. His touch was warm. "We came back to teach the galaxy how to hope, to remind everyone why existence matters, and to stand together when the darkness arrives." The door opened behind him. Light poured through, so bright it hurt to look at. "Come," the human said. "The others are waking. It is time for you to meet our council. It is time for the galaxy to learn what we became." Lith followed him into the light. Behind her, Commander Soren and the other delegates emerged from the garden. Their faces changed by what they had seen. They walked together toward a room where 12 figures waited. 12 humans who spoke for billions. 12 ordinary-looking people who felt like standing next to suns. "Welcome," the council said as one. "We have waited a long time for this moment. Let us begin." And in the vast silence of space, a conversation began that would change everything. The council chamber was a circle of warm light. 12 humans sat on simple chairs, arranged in a ring. They looked ordinary. Some were old, some young. Different colors, different builds, different faces. But when they spoke, it felt like the universe itself was paying attention. Commander Soren stood with the other delegates, his warrior's mind trying to measure the threat. He could find none. These humans radiated no aggression, but the power he sensed from them was unlike anything he had ever encountered. It was like standing in the presence of a calm ocean that could become a storm at any moment. "You want to know what happened to us?" said the eldest human, a woman with silver hair and dark eyes. "You want to know where we went and why we came back? We will tell you everything." The delegates waited. 10,000 years ago, we saw our future, she began. We had joined the Galactic Concord. We had spread across 200 worlds. Our technology was advancing faster every year, and we were terrified. Terrified. Ambassador Kethferil asked. "You were prospering. We were dying," another council member said, a young man with pale skin. "Not our bodies, our souls." We looked at the galaxy and saw the pattern. Every great civilization follows the same path. They rise, they expand, they grow proud, and then they destroy themselves. War, greed, fear of the other. The same story repeated 1,000,000 times across 1,000,000 worlds. The silver-haired woman nodded. We looked at our own history and saw the same pattern. We had nearly destroyed ourselves many times before we left Earth. Nuclear weapons, climate collapse, diseases we created. Every time, we survived by luck as much as wisdom, and our luck was running out. "So you ran away," Soren said. He did not mean it as an insult. He simply wanted to understand. "We stepped back," the woman replied. "We created a pocket dimension, a space outside normal space, where time moved differently. 1 year in the galaxy was 100 years for us. We needed time. Time to do the hardest thing any species has ever attempted." "What did you do?" Lythe asked. "We evolved. Not our bodies. Our minds. Our hearts. Our societies." The woman leaned forward. "We spent centuries learning to truly listen to each other. We faced every dark impulse hiding in our nature. Hatred, tribalism, the need to dominate. We did not pretend these things did not exist. We looked at them directly. We understood them. And then we chose something different." She stood and walked to the center of the circle. As she moved, images appeared in the air around her. Scenes from human history, wars, suffering, but also kindness, courage, love that persisted against all odds. We learned that darkness is not our enemy. It is our teacher. Pain tells us what needs healing. Fear shows us what we need to face. Anger reveals what we truly care about. We stopped fighting ourselves and started listening. "It sounds like philosophy," Kethferil said. "Pretty words. But how did you change so much?" A third council member spoke, a middle-aged man with kind eyes. "We developed techniques, ways to share experiences directly. If I hate you because you are different, what happens when I live your life? When I feel your hopes and fears from the inside? Hatred cannot survive understanding. We built bridges between minds. We experienced each other's existence. And slowly, we became one people. Not a hive mind. We still have our individual selves, but we are connected in ways you cannot imagine." Sorun felt something shift in his chest. His entire life, he had been taught that strength meant standing alone, that needing others was weakness. But these humans were the most powerful beings he had ever encountered, and they spoke of connection as their greatest achievement. "Show me," he said suddenly. The council looked at him. "Show me what you mean. Let me experience it." The kind-eyed man smiled. He walked to Soren and placed a hand on his arm. In an instant, Soren was somewhere else. He was living the life of a human child, growing up on a world far from Earth. He felt her joy at seeing her first sunrise. He felt her grief when her grandmother died. He experienced her fear when she realized how small she was in the vast universe. And he felt the moment when she understood that smallness did not mean meaninglessness, that her brief life mattered precisely because it was brief. The vision lasted only seconds. But when it ended, Soren was crying for the second time that day. "What did you do to me?" he whispered. "Nothing was done to you," the man said gently. "You simply remembered what all warriors forget, that the things worth fighting for are not victories or glory, they are moments of connection, small kindnesses, love given freely. The silver-haired woman returned to her seat. We came back because we finally understood our purpose. Humanity was never meant to rule the galaxy. We were meant to remind it how to feel. The darkness you mentioned. Lythe asked, "The thing that is coming?" The room grew quiet. The council members looked at each other, sharing thoughts without speaking. Silence. The woman finally said, "It is ancient. Older than most galaxies. It is not a creature or a weapon. It is an idea. The idea that nothing matters, that all things end, so why bother? It drifts through space, touching minds, showing them the truth of entropy. And everywhere it goes, civilizations give up. They stop building, stop hoping, stop living. How do you fight an idea?" Kethfral asked. "With a better idea," the woman said. "With hope, with meaning. With a stubborn belief that every moment of existence is precious precisely because it does not last." She stood again and spread her arms wide. "This is why we returned. Not to save you. To teach you, to remind you what your ancestors knew before they forgot. You are not alone. You never were. And the universe is more beautiful than the darkness wants you to believe." She looked at each delegate in turn. "You have a choice. Return to the Concord and deliver our message. Or stay here and learn what we learned. Both paths are needed. Both paths matter." Lythe stepped forward before she could stop herself. "I want to stay," she said. "I want to learn." Beside her, Commander Sawarin nodded slowly. "So do I." The council smiled. Outside the station, stars burned bright in the endless dark. And somewhere far away, the silence turned its ancient attention toward a galaxy that was beginning to wake up. 6 months passed. The galaxy was changing. Ambassador Kethferil returned to the Concord with humanity's message. He spoke before the Grand Assembly, telling them everything he had seen. The Council of 12, the gardens of extinct creatures, the power that burned behind human eyes, and the warning of what was coming. The reaction was chaos. Some species refused to believe. The militant orthodoxy declared that humans were a threat that must be destroyed before they grew too powerful. The Sindari Collective called for calm and diplomacy. A dozen smaller civilizations panicked and began building weapons. Old alliances crumbled. New fears spread like fire. But something else was spreading too. Something the leaders did not expect. Stories across the galaxy, ordinary people began sharing strange tales. A cargo pilot on a remote station claimed that a human had appeared when her engines failed. He helped her fix them, shared a meal, and then vanished as mysteriously as he had arrived. A doctor on a mining colony said that a human woman visited their hospital. She sat with dying patients and held their hands. She told them stories about their own lives, things she could not possibly have known. And when she left, the patients were at peace. A Vethkai elder, one of the ancient silicon beings who had seen galaxies die, told his descendants that he received a visitor in the night. The human asked him about his memories. The Vethkai had lived for 3 million years. He had watched countless species rise and fall. He had grown tired of existence. But the human listened to his stories with such genuine wonder that the elder felt something he had not felt in eons. He felt that his life mattered. Humanity was not waiting for the Concord to make decisions. They were already out there, moving through the galaxy, planting seeds of hope wherever they went. Not conquering, not commanding. Just reminding people that they were not alone, far away. On the human station, Lythe was learning to become a witness. The training was harder than anything she had imagined. Not physically. The humans asked nothing of her body. They asked everything of her mind. Each day, she entered a chamber called the Memory Well. There, she experienced lives, hundreds of them. She lived as a farmer on a world destroyed by war. She felt the last moments of a mother dying to save her children. She experienced the joy of a child seeing snow for the first time. She lived through betrayal, love, triumph, despair, wonder, and grief. At first, it was overwhelming. She came out of the memory well, shaking and sick. The emotions were too much. She wanted to quit, but her teacher, a human named Sarah, sat with her through every difficulty. The point is not to become numb, Sarah explained. The point is to feel everything and keep going anyway. The silence wins by making people believe that feeling is pointless. We defeat it by proving that feeling is the whole point. Slowly, Lythe understood. She learned to carry the weight of other lives without being crushed by it. She learned that grief was not weakness. She learned that joy was not foolish. She learned that the universe was vast and cold. But that warmth existed wherever beings chose to create it, Commander. Soren was learning different lessons. The warrior who had never lost a battle was learning how to surrender. Not to an enemy. To himself, his teachers took him back to the garden, where he had seen the peaceful one. The extinct creature from his homeworld. They asked him to sit with it. Just sit. No purpose. No goal. Just being present with another living thing. For the first 3 days, Soren was restless. His mind screamed for action, for a purpose, for something to fight. On the 4th day, the peaceful one lay down beside him. It rested its great head on his leg and closed its eyes. Soren felt something crack inside him. All his life he had been taught that the only value was victory. The only purpose was conquest. But this creature, this gentle beast that his ancestors had killed, trusted him. It felt safe with him. And in that moment, he understood what strength really meant. True strength was not the ability to destroy. It was the willingness to be gentle, to be vulnerable, to love something knowing you could lose it. When he finally left the garden, he was not the same warrior who had entered. 2 months later, the silence arrived. It came to a small colony at the edge of the galaxy. The settlement held a mix of species, people who had been forgotten by the great powers. They had built something small and beautiful together. Then the darkness fell. No one could say exactly when it started. A farmer woke up and could not remember why he should get out of bed. A teacher looked at her students and felt nothing. A child stopped laughing. Within a week, the entire colony had fallen into despair. People stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped caring. They sat in silence, staring at nothing, waiting to die. The distress signal reached human space. Lythe was among the witnesses who answered. They arrived to find a colony of ghosts. Living beings who had forgotten how to live. The silence hung over everything like a fog, invisible but suffocating. The humans did not fight it. They did not try to chase it away with weapons or technology. They sat down with the colonists. They held hands. They told stories. Lythe found a young girl sitting alone in a dark room. The child's eyes were empty. She did not respond when Lythe spoke. Lythe did not give up. She sat beside the girl and began talking about stars, about all the beautiful things she had seen in her years of watching the sky, about the wonders that existed in the universe waiting to be discovered. At first, nothing changed, but Lythe kept talking. She shared memories from the memory well, stories of courage and kindness, tales of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Hours passed. Then, slowly, the girl turned her head. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care?" Lythe felt tears on her face. "Because you matter," she said. "Because your existence means something. Because the universe is better with you in it." The girl began to cry, and in that moment the silence loosened its grip just a little. Across the colony, similar scenes played out. Humans and witnesses, sitting with the hopeless, reminding them why hope was worth having. Sharing meals, singing songs, simply being present. It took 3 weeks. But slowly, the colony came back to life. People remembered why they had built this place. They remembered what they loved. They chose, one by one, to keep living. The silence retreated. Not defeated, not destroyed, but pushed back. Word spread across the galaxy. The enemy could be fought, not with weapons. With connection, and in the void between stars, the silence noticed. It had never encountered a species that could resist it. It turned its full attention toward the Milky, way. The final battle was coming. The silence came for everything at once. It appeared at the center of the galaxy, a darkness so complete that stars dimmed in its presence. Space itself seemed to bend away from it, as if reality could not bear to touch what had arrived. And then it spoke. Not in words. In feelings. Every mind in the galaxy felt the message at the same moment. It was the truth of entropy. The certainty that everything ends. Stars die. Civilizations fall. Love fades. In 1 billion years, the universe itself will grow cold and empty. Nothing you build will last. Nothing you feel will matter. Everything you are will be forgotten. Why bother? Across 4,000 civilizations, beings began to despair. Ships stopped flying. Factories went silent. Parents looked at their children and felt nothing but sadness for the suffering that awaited them. Leaders abandoned their posts. Soldiers dropped their weapons. What was the point of fighting when the end was certain? The galactic concord collapsed in a single day. 10,000 years of cooperation dissolved as species retreated into themselves. Each alone with their hopelessness, but not everywhere, in pockets across the galaxy. The light held. Witnesses stood among the frightened, doing what they had been trained to do. They gathered people together. They shared food and stories. They reminded them of every reason existence mattered. Lythe stood on a station above a dying world, surrounded by refugees who had lost everything. The silence pressed against her mind, showing her the futility of her efforts. These people would die. This station would fall. She would be forgotten. She did not deny it. She had learned not to fight truth. Instead, she held the hand of an old man sitting beside her and said, "Tell me about your life." The man looked at her with hollow eyes. "Why, it's over." "Because I want to know," Lythe said. "Because you lived. Because your story matters to me." Slowly, haltingly, the man began to speak. He told her about his childhood on a farm, about the woman he loved, about the children he raised, about small moments of beauty that had made his life worth living. As he spoke, something changed in his eyes. The despair did not vanish, but something else appeared alongside it. A tiny spark of defiance, a refusal to let the darkness have the last word around them. Others began sharing their stories too. The station filled with voices, with memories, with connection. The silence pressed harder, but it could not break them. At the center of the galaxy, humanity gathered. 14 billion minds connected across space in a web of shared consciousness. They did not build weapons. They did not prepare for war. They simply stood together, facing the ancient darkness. The silence turned its attention toward them. It had destroyed countless civilizations. It had watched galaxies go quiet. These small creatures could not hope to resist. It showed them everything. Every human who had ever suffered. Every war. Every betrayal. Every moment of cruelty in their long history. It showed them the truth of what they were. A species born in violence, capable of terrible things, destined to be forgotten. The humans did not look away.
Us.
They answered as one voice. "We see it. We know what we are." The silence pressed deeper. It showed them the future. Their sun dying. Their worlds crumbling. The last human breathing their last breath alone in the cold dark. "Yes," the humans said again. "We know how the story ends." The silence could not understand. Every other civilization had broken at this point. They had seen the futility of existence and surrendered. Why did these creatures persist? And then humanity did something the silence had never experienced. They showed it their answer. Not an argument. Not a denial. A memory. A human mother holding her newborn child. She knew the child would someday die. She knew the universe was vast and indifferent. She knew that nothing lasted forever, and she loved anyway. She loved so fiercely that the knowledge of loss only made the love more precious. A human standing on a hillside at sunset. They knew the sun would set. They knew night was coming, and they watched in wonder anyway, grateful for the beauty of this single, unrepeatable moment. a human holding the hand of their dying friend, sitting in the darkness, refusing to let them face the end alone. This was humanity's answer to despair. Not denial, but acceptance. Not pretending that loss did not hurt, but loving anyway. Not fighting the darkness, but creating light within it. The silence recoiled. "What are you?" it asked, and for the first time in a billion years there was uncertainty in its voice. "We are the ones who know that everything ends," humanity answered, "and we choose to matter anyway. We choose connection. We choose hope. We choose to love, even though it means we will grieve. Because the alternative is to feel nothing. And feeling nothing is the only true death." The humans reached out. Not with weapons. With compassion. "You've been alone so long," they said to the silence. "Wandering between galaxies, showing others the truth of entropy, but you never asked the most important question. You showed them that everything ends. You never asked what makes the time before the ending worthwhile." The silence trembled. It had been asking that question for a billion years. It had never found an answer. "Let us show you," humanity said. They opened their minds. They shared their memories. Not just the pain, everything. Every moment of love. Every act of kindness. Every sunrise that made someone stop and stare in wonder. Every time a hand reached out to help a stranger. The silence absorbed it all. And slowly something began to change. It was not destroyed. Entropy was real. Endings were real. But within the darkness, something new began to grow. Understanding, peace, the realization that endings were not enemies. They were what made beginnings precious. The silence did not vanish. It transformed. It became part of the cosmic cycle, no longer a force of despair, but a reminder that time was short and therefore valuable. The stars brightened. Across the galaxy, beings felt the change. The crushing weight of hopelessness lifted, not because the truth had changed, but because they remembered how to live with it. Lythe stood on the station, watching the darkness fade. The old man beside her was smiling through his tears. "We did it," he whispered. "We remembered," Lythe said. "That's all. We remembered what matters." Commander Soren stood among humans, no longer a warrior seeking victory, just a being among beings, connected to something larger than himself. A year later, the first joint expedition launched. Humans and Sindari and Vethkai and 100 other species traveling together toward another galaxy. Not to conquer, not to escape. To carry the story forward, to spread the light. Lythe watched from an observation deck as the ships disappeared into the void. A human stood beside her, the same kind-eyed man who had first shown Soren the truth. "What happens now?" Lythe asked. The human smiled. "Now we keep living, keep connecting, keep creating meaning in a universe that does not provide it automatically. We have a long time before the final darkness. We intend to fill it with wonder." Lythe looked up at the stars. They seemed brighter than she remembered, more alive. "I used to think watching the sky was lonely," she said. "I spent 3 years looking at darkness and emptiness. And now?" She smiled. "Now I see all the places where light can grow, all the connections waiting to be made, all the stories waiting to be told." The human put a hand on her shoulder. "That is the only answer to despair. Not to pretend the darkness does not exist, but to look at it clearly and say, yes, the night is vast. Yes, the stars are far apart, but look at how they shine. Look at how beautiful it is." Across the galaxy, beings looked up. For the first time in millennia, they saw the stars not as cold and distant, but as lights in the darkness. Beacons of hope. Proof that even in the vast emptiness, something was burning bright. And if they listened very carefully, they could hear it. Carried on light that had traveled 10,000 years. A human song. A lullaby about returning home. The words were simple. The melody was ancient. But the meaning was eternal. You are not alone. You never were. And as long as one heart keeps beating, one voice keeps singing, one hand keeps reaching out to another, the darkness will never win. The universe had witnessed humanity's return, and every star fell silent, not in despair, but in wonder, in gratitude, in hope. The story was not over. It was just beginning.